Yo, what the hell actually happened in the Heavenly Delusion anime? I can't tell if it's manga spoilers or fan theories gone wild, with all these Easter eggs about these man-eating, mutated monsters. Plus, we have the added mysteries of all these timeline scrambles and missing baby mamas. Of all the overhyped anime trends that try to live up to expectations and avoid the dreadful label of being fucking mid, Heavenly Delusion made a lot of hefty promises in an intriguing post-apocalyptic world that is crazy detailed with cinematic levels of visual emotions and color and storytelling. And we are actually blessed with this quirky duo of protagonists who actually had me laughing my ass off with their perfect comedic timing and dynamic personalities that are really refreshing because they're actually not recycled anime tropes. Well, at least most of the time. There's definitely some controversial shock value in this mysterious science fiction, and this false sense of security that of course a child could mistake for heaven in this unforgiving world. But by the time these psychokinetic monsters start having their battle royale, with the fate of humanity on the line in a technological civil war, I honestly had no idea what or who or where or when this story was actually moving towards. And it all starts with this utopia of unique children and a bountiful heaven of tomatoes. Listen, there's gonna be some spoilers in this, so if you didn't watch Heavenly Delusion, go ahead and go watch it now. And if you did watch it and you got your degree and you think you know everything, go watch it again because I'm gonna tell you what you missed. Unknown to these students of this Heaven's Academy is the outside of the outside in the real apocalyptic world that has been overrun with wild forests that have taken over rusted homes and abandoned and shadowy cities. Wandering these streets are our main characters Kiriko and Maru, who are searching for this legendary Heaven's Academy and also trying to survive with a really positive, campy attitude. And this vibrant but hostile backdrop, combined with the delightful banter of our main characters, already got me interested in this adventure before they even had their first squabble with some low-level ruffians. And this duo has some skilly moves with some Bruce Lee levels of combat. And our girl Kiriko has these laser blast-offs that are all calculated with incredibly quick wit. This clearly gives our main characters the upper hand in this world. So there's already a clear difference between the outside world with Kiriko and Maru and this sheltered academy, where all these kids have weird superhuman traits from physical prowess to mental intuition and psychokinetic abilities. But the outside world has its oddities too in the form of man-eating creatures. And for kids that are already raised in the outside world during these haunting times, these monsters are just a reality. Kiriko and Maru really have to stick together, and no, it's not because they have that weird anime sibling relationship. These two actually aren't related at all. Kiriko is actually Maru's bodyguard, and they're trying to find a secret scientist who can give them all the answers to what's going on in this world, and how Maru's ability can maybe give us some kind of antidote to whatever monsters have been wreaking havoc on whatever is left of civilization. When Kiriko and Maru square up for the first time with this bird-like man-eater, Maru is already out of his beta little brother mode and is building up on his offensive capabilities. And Kiriko is really firing off shots with her powerful laser glizzy. So in the first kaiju showdown, this old lady stops our heroes before we go into our fight mode, and she starts claiming that this monster is her son, which already tells me that a lot of people have a weird relationship to whatever is going on in this world and whatever these monsters really are. And they really had me for a second, almost believing that maybe this monster actually was this lady's child. But after a solemn and almost comedic pause, this lady gets her head wrecked and decked as expected. And there's no time for Kiriko and Maru to mourn, because if they don't fight back or run out, they're gonna get sliced up too. Maru ends up killing these man-eaters with a surge of glowing power that travels into these monsters' existence and destroys their core and heart. It's pretty badass and definitely needs a lot of agility on Maru's part, besides being such a soft and deadly touch. But now we can finally get some info on the goal of these kids' journey. And this is when Maru shows Kiriko this syringe with a drug that he's supposed to inject inside of some other person who's supposed to look just like him and is supposed to come from this Tomatoes Heaven Academy. And I'm not gonna try and act like I got the implications feelings the first time around when I was watching this. Listen, this is anime. Everybody got the same face and just very different hairstyles. It was only in hindsight that I realized that one of these kids named Tokyo in the Heaven's Academy really actually does look just like Maru. There are so many signs that point to something deeper and a lot more sinister in this mysterious facility. Whether it's rumors from scavengers or mysterious logos, and all of the trippy back and forth between the outside world and the secrets of this heavenly delusion. That's all controlled by artificial intelligence and robots that the adults have no idea what their actual plan is either. The real question then is what lies beyond this? And why do some of these kids have all of these strange powers and talents and physical attributes? I don't know how anyone in this Heaven's Academy can give us any answers or insight to what's actually going on in this world. But maybe some answers could be found by whoever has this same face or maybe even the same abilities as Maru to kill the man-eaters. And speaking of having the same face, let me touch on this gender-swapping elephant in the room. Because I honestly believe this wasn't just a woke plot point to pander to queer folk by unnecessarily dropping in a trans male character as Kiriko. And if you have a problem with trans people or you can't even have a nuanced conversation, then your dumbass can click out of the video. Because Kiriko is not even trans as much as I'd love a gender non-conforming king as a main character. Kiriko is essentially two characters in one, which would essentially be more like having multiple personalities. Because her mind was swapped with her brother after this tragic accident involving race cars and man-eaters, which totally destroyed her brother's body after he tried to save his sister. And after Kiriko pulled her brother's body out of this man-eating monster, something else ended up happening that's been lost in her memories that caused these siblings' brains to be literally swapped. And this had to happen in order to save Kiriko's life and turned her into whatever unique individual she is now. But Kiriko, unfortunately, has to break this down to Maru, who is still totally crushing on her. But he doesn't understand the disconnect that Kiriko still sees herself as a boy, even though she doesn't have a problem with people seeing her as a girl or being called a girl. There's a lot of trauma here and mental survival gymnastics going on that allowed Kiriko to make it this far without being destroyed by the reality of her brother's death, even if their minds were somehow swapped after this accident. And I can tell you now that this dark backstory that Kiriko is running away from or running towards really comes back as trouble in order to find the quack doctor that did this to her and her brother. But anyway, this crazy looking giant fish monster appears, and I swear, doesn't this derpy looking thing look just like one of those drawings from the kids at the Heaven's Academy? If these drawings by that kid Kona are actually starting to come into reality, I'm already worried about whatever mutant baby is gonna end up manifesting itself while we're still trying to figure out what's going on. So maybe these kids on the inside are actually closer to finding this out, while Kiriko and Maru are fighting the aftermath of all of these monsters crawling about the outside with Maru's special deadly touch. But it's so wild how these kids are so sheltered and still so ignorant that they don't even recognize that these fleshy, faceless blobs that are growing clones in the facility aren't actually real babies. All of this experimentation and even their true biology has been kept as a high-level secret by the adults who are supposed to be running this facility. But I think they're actually running the orders of the automated intelligence that's trying to create the ultimate human prototype that can survive in an apocalyptic world. And they're creating this technological incubator for whatever monsters they're sending out there. There's still a lot of things that we don't understand about these kids and that they don't understand about themselves, or how they feel about this strange bubble they've been living in, or all the strange illnesses that keep affecting them. It's not just puberty, there's something even more messed up going on. And I feel like it's Tokyo who is most exposed to this internal conflict of who and what to trust while her friends around her are changing for better or for worse. It was all this AI experimentation shit that got us in this condition to begin with. Whether it's technology uprising to take over civilization, or if humans just destroyed ourselves in a mutually assured destruction, is really just the question of the great disaster. But in this Heaven's facility that's supposed to protect and nurture these children, they are still victims to their scientific lust for knowledge. And it's breeding this uncontrollable power while culling the innocent and replacing them with more complacent clones. The pain of these forced mutations and these cruel ideals even drive these children to resent their own existence. And there's already this social and political conflict with those who are still grasping on to technology against those who claim to reject all the advantages of science and want to return to a natural order. I mean, it was probably these mad scientists who started implanting these pieces of man-eaters into other humans in order to find the secret to immortal life. And these so-called doctors, or rather straight-up cults, continued with these amputations and implants to try and transcend mortality by becoming less human and more machine or something else. But letting these robots play God with the threat of these preteens turning into monsters is definitely what ends up causing total chaos that destroys civilization. But even though there isn't this explicit connection that obviously states that these monsters are actually these lab rat children, it becomes entirely possible that Tomato Heaven is all a delusion. And these scientists have manufactured hell on Earth with these man-eating humanoids. And the whole plan becomes entirely clear if you're really paying attention the second time around. On the outside, Maru knows more about the harshness and gangs and violence that's caused this world to reach a current state of lawlessness. He was born in the age of the Great Disaster, where survivors were left to live off of scraps, and everyone's scrambling to rebuild their old world in this war-torn wasteland, even if it means replicating the worst parts of exploitation and even more harmful robotic technology. But Kiriko is fighting to find the answers to Maru's existence and also find the connections that she made in the past with these other scientists who've created other communities throughout the environment. One of these guys has to know the reason for Maru's existence and why he's able to neutralize the man-eaters. And it's almost like he's disintegrating their souls from the inside. But let's be honest, Maru probably has more determination to try and hook up with Kiriko than be subject to more human experimentation. And it's not just because she has the body of this badass laser-shooting tomboy babe, but also because of her genuine personality that's not even really her, but really the mind of her younger brother. But even in their antics, they still manage to respect each other very deeply for their own strength. And they're trying to find what this adventure will mean for them as individuals as well, and for the sake of what's left of this world, even if it's not entirely human. So in the struggle between technology and nature, all in the while, humans still can't be trusted. Even while we're fighting these man-eaters that are hiding and hunting us in these ruins of civilization, they have not just physical, but also psychological attacks that seem to manifest your greatest fears from within you. But I already feel that this unregulated and irresponsible use of man-made technology has already brought about the greatest fear of being trapped in one's own immortal body. And this is when it becomes clear that it actually is humans, in fact children, that were turned into these man-eating monsters. And they all had to endure this painful, disease-like transformation. When our mains, Kiriko and Maru, find the Dr. Usami, who's been hearing about their mercenary work, he brings them to a quadriplegic young girl covered in blood and bandages and wires. And it turns out she's struggling to keep her human form before she turns into one of those monsters herself. And now that Dr. Usami knows that they've been destroying man-eaters with Maru's touch, he's the only one that can liberate her from this fate, essentially giving the grace of assisted euthanization so that way she can at least die as a human. But this also means that Maru has to acknowledge that up until this point, he's not only been killing monsters, but actually killing former humans. And these former humans are the aged up children from the Tomato Heaven. And this caused this unfathomable emotional burden for Maru that almost is impossible for him to live with. And we realize that this wounded girl who was on the brink of losing herself, and Dr. Usami himself, who held her in his arms and cared for her for all of these years, were actually the children Mimihime and Shiro. And they tried to survive and protect each other for years, and that was truly the most gut-wrenching and saddest feeling. And seeing the domino effect of destruction and lives lost because of all of these actions, it really made me wonder, just like Maru was probably thinking, what's the actual purpose of this journey and what's actually going on in this world? This great disaster really began when our little friend Tokyo became a teen mom. Yes, you heard that right. Clearly this Heaven's Academy didn't have a damn sex ed class, and no one has any control about how these babies, mutant or otherwise, are actually made. Our girl Tokyo, who has this calling for the outside world, also has this longing for love and affection among her peers, but in a way that's different from friendship with the other kids that she just can't seem to put into words yet, because it's something more personal and intimate with her romance with Kona. Truly, this is the original human experimentation that can create life without some mechanical incubator. But who knows what kind of offspring is going to be birthed by Tokyo, because clearly the adults don't know what to do either, since they're used to cloning these pseudo-children from the AI machines that have been controlling every aspect of their existence. It's interesting how Tokyo even references her pregnancy as the thing inside of her. It's just this object that has to be removed because there's no preconceived notion of affection with this child that hasn't been born yet. This pregnancy is just a parasite, something making Tokyo sick and keeping her away from her friends and loved ones. And it's even more messed up the way they isolate and quarantine her from the rest of the school, which means that Tokyo had to endure her whole pregnancy in cold solitude like a test subject. And there was nothing that made me feel more queasy and lightheaded than hearing Tokyo's screams of pain during her childbirth. But it's a pretty low bar in this anime when the only thing that was consensual was actually these kids messing around and not knowing that a baby was going to be made out of it. I mean, we find out that there are actually forced breeding cults in this world, and there are these groups that are trying to force the increase of the human population, even with the shoe on the other foot, with women being in charge and domesticating men to be their breeding pigs. That little comedic side story from Mr. See You Bye Bye was a legit all-woman cult in this world. And there's an interesting theory that the women who freed him from enslavement, after he joined their throuple and became their baby daddy, were actually the two lesbian girlies who were making out in the forest in the beginning of Heaven's Academy. And because of that, his own baby that he is reunited with ends up inheriting their man-eater abilities even in his tiny baby body. He turns everything he touches into ice in his sleep like a deadly weapon. Another juicy theory that I came across was with that frisky King of Hotels chick, who also has a latent core of a man-eater and is probably one of these kids' offspring too. And it's possible that maybe the original children who were experimented on, when they have kids of their own, maybe they're able to maintain a human body and don't turn into man-eating monsters. It seems like there's always a struggle on trying to define who gets to be human and who doesn't, and who's supposed to be better than human. Meanwhile, the facility is still pumping out these half-baked 3D printed children, and these dumbass clones lack even a sense of soul, and they have even less control of their mutant abilities, that are becoming way more obvious that they're very similar to the man-eaters that we run into in the apocalyptic world. And it starts to feel cruel that these kids have to live with this painful, inevitable fate of becoming these creatures of chaos. And it looks like the director of this facility is even more invested in the machines to continue the experimentations on these children. This bitch is totally crazy, trying to control the future of these superhuman kids, and it's all for her own old-ass benefit, and they try to find the secret to eternal life before they kick the bucket. When we find out that Tokyo doesn't just have one child, but she actually has twins, the higher-ups are already trying to force their experimentations on these infants, and they're trying to breach the limits of mortality, even if it's straight up unethical or damn right supervillain levels of evil. As these timelines are starting to realign, the story seems to reveal that the person that Mario is actually looking for might really be his twin, and they look exactly like Tokyo from the past and Maru from the future. And these scientists are fumbling the bag to try and find out which one of these twins is supposed to have the inherited power, and which kid are they going to be nice enough to give back to Tokyo. So it would make sense if one of these babies were to evolve to have Maru's power of touch. So very fucking briefly, we have a few clear hints that everything about this timeline isn't quite chronological. And this is why I'm telling you guys this anime gets better when you watch it again and again, because there are so many details to be uncovered. From realizing that Mimihime and Shiro are aged up from the outside world, to seeing that Kiriko's laser gun is actually manufactured by the same facility that breeds these mutant children. Which means that whatever is happening here in this Heaven Academy is happening way before our journey with Kiriko and Maru. And this setup is such impressive storytelling because I know a lot of viewers didn't see this coming. It had such engaging and climactic mysteries and so many plot lines happening simultaneously, but the real downfall of this Heaven Academy is letting artificial intelligence and technology overpower our human limits, our ethics, our emotions, and even our children's futures. Just imagine if thinking outside of the box really means to conceptualize destabilize the world outside of what we're allowed to know. This is what caused all of the computerized systems that the Heaven Academy built to begin working against them in the explosive collapse of the entire facility. And this really set loose the chaos and curiosity of these children, who will eventually become man-eaters or identify themselves as Hiruko. The walls have finally crumbled on their benevolent supervisors, and it just opened this unknown reality and this endless sky, with this vast, endless horizon for kids who've been living inside of a dome their entire lives. And a lot of the time, I'm still not sure if all of this was actually a test that was intentionally pushed by the AI that run this facility, or if this was a coup d'etat from one of the other scientists who wanted to free these kids from further experimentation by letting them loose into the outside of the outside, under the guise of an exam turned emergency explosion. And these kids have no idea how vast the world really is, because they still believe the academy they've always known is the center of their existence. But the resulting environment caused by their great disaster has other common enemies than just these children turned mutated monsters. So this show has to remind us that humans are plenty cruel to each other even without an apocalypse going on. And no matter how much our main characters can kick ass, they're still vulnerable to psychological manipulation, especially from people who they trust. And Kiriko unfortunately has to learn this about one of the scientists she's searching for, a man named Robin. And he knew her and her brother as a child when they were still in their original bodies. Now you'd think this would be a needed reunion that would bring a lot of closure and answers, but there's already this dreadful tenseness in the false comforts of a familiar face. Now, Robin probably did a lot to build this commune and crops and shelter and power, and learn all the medical skills that keep people alive. But he's also a bitch-ass gaslighting rapist degenerate. He doesn't see or respect Kiriko as an individual or even as her brother's personality. To him, Kiriko just looks like another girl who's vulnerable enough for him to take advantage of all over again. And the most fucked up part was that Kiriko was probably strong enough to escape and beat the shit out of this living human trash. But the mental betrayal and damage is the most incapacitating burden that really kept Kiriko trapped, especially between her two identities, both of which Robin manipulated. And it looks like her partner, who she's supposed to be bodyguarding, is actually the only one who can save her now. And I just wanted Maru to get off of his bitch ass and just run and save Kiriko. It made me sick to my stomach when it was clear that she's been trapped and repeatedly assaulted over the course of days. But Maru is understandably trying to give her space and thinking that she's having this big happy reunion, but really this has all been shady from the start. And I felt the rage burning the entire time while Maru bum rushed this fortress, knocking out anybody who stood in his way. While Kiriko is still bound and trapped physically and mentally in her own turmoil, I think this traumatic moment also causes the memory of her and her brother to overlap. But because of that, she really gained some intuition about what's really happening and why this human trash Robin has never felt right from the start. And it goes even further back to the day that her and her brother were caught in that fateful tragic accident. And I kept wondering how Kiriko's body even ended up getting injured that caused her and her brother's brains to be swapped. But it all comes back to the sound of a gunshot in that memory and the look of horror on Robin's face when he saw Kiriko, and it was like he just saw a ghost or he just saw the dead body of a girl he thought he killed. And because Kiriko is in this vulnerable victim state of mind, she can't even properly think through anything until she sees Maru coming in through her room and she gains this strength again. But sadly, it's not to protect herself, but to keep Maru from totally murderizing Robin after he realized that he had her tied up in his room having his way with her. Maru's cold, empty stare was filled with anger as he pummeled Robin's face near death with his fist. And it was one of those times that I wish that this revenge went past that point for this smug excuse for life. Robin didn't only take advantage of someone who trusted him, but someone that he knew as a child and tried to do harm towards back then. And he continued to do so even after Kiriko seemed to forget all the harm he did to her. Robin does not deserve mercy. He doesn't deserve to breathe anymore. And frankly, I believe that Robin was up to even more corrupted, sinister, messed up shit. And he already deserved the most most brutal execution before he starts repeating the mistakes of the messed up civilization we left behind. That also ended up causing all of the mistakes that created the history and future that we're living in now. And listen, I know that this psychological shit, especially with childhood trauma, is really complicated and stuff, but it's all of those complexities that made this development even more moving and impactful. And this is honestly how complicated it can be in real life too, when everything that you know turns out to be a lie. There was a notable divide in the audience reactions to this scene, and with this type of violence being part of the plot of the story, there's this expectation to handle it in a certain type of way with respect to real victims, you know? And some people don't want this kind of violence to exist even in a fictional apocalypse. But I think it's important to realize that through this, there isn't a perfect template for how victims react to the trauma that's put on them. There's no right way to cope with their experiences if they get over it too fast, or if they turn their whole identity into a reflection of their trauma. But I don't think that this scene happened to Kiriko for no reason as far as connecting the plot points to the overall story. This really triggered a memory and a deep emotion from Kiriko that was lost in her brother's consciousness. That just like Maru, maybe Kiriko is also trying to protect her brother's personality as well too, even internally in her subconscious, that was assumed to be lost after this accident ended up literally switching their minds. But these memories create a history and a future that defines Robin as this villainous poison to humanity. But let me tell you, the foreshadowing for the next season is already insane. With the potential comeback of the Immortal Order and Tokyo revealing her own Hiriko powers, when she explodes with blood tentacles and glowing eyes to protect her and her child from this crazy old bitch, and that last chilling scene of those 4 kids who finally escaped the island on that speedboat towards a glowing city that they know nothing about, all unknowing of the impending great disaster. And I can't wait for season 2 because I know that this first storyline was so compelling, with so many layers of details that it really deserved a second and third watch. And it really made the whole series even better, being able to analyze all the secrets of Heavenly Delusion. Let me know your thoughts and theories down in the comments, and check out my anime playlist for more anime reviews and reactions. If you like what you see, subscribe to join the Punk family. And you can find me on my socials, links down in the description. Thanks so much for watching. See you, bye bye.